All right, well, it's a dot-com bubble all over again. This one comes from Forbes. SEC reverses day trading rule in boon for retail brokers. Da, 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 da. Let's see. So the SEC is unwinding a rule born from the wreckage of the dot-com crash. On Tuesday, regulators approved a change that would get rid of the so-called pattern day trade rule, a two-decade-old requirement that forced active margin traders to keep up with at least $25,000 in their brokerage account if they want to make frequent trades. The rule came out the rule came out of the early 2000s when regulators worried that small investors were taking excessive risks by buying and selling stocks with borrowed money. Under under the old rule, anyone who made four or more trades in 5 business days was labeled as a quote pattern day trader unquote. Once that happens, the trader had to keep at least $25,000 in the account at all times. Critics said the rule never made much sense. They argued it acted more like a wealth test than a safety measure. A person with $24,000 could be blocked from making trades, while someone with $25,001 could keep going. Regulators noted that the rule was written for a different era, before zero commission trading apps, real time data, and easy access to market research. The change could be good news for retail investors who want more flexibility. It could also be a win for brokerage firms like Robinhood and Webull that have courted novice investors with lower balances. They're likely to see more trading activity. Critics say that the old rule existed for a reason. They argue that younger, unsophisticated investors are trading more aggressively, often influenced by social media, online personalities, and options speculation. They worry that removing the $25,000 requirement can make it easier for inexperienced traders to take on too much risk. Webull, the St. Petersburg, Florida-based retail broker, which had $564 million in revenue in 2025, says that the rule had become outdated. Anthony Denier, the company's U.S. CEO, said the retail investors are now, quote, more informed, unquote, and have better tools than they did when the rule was first created, and that the changes could reflect how modern markets work and remove limits that can feel arbitrary. The new system will focus less on how many trades a person makes and more on whether the account actually has enough money to support the risk at any given moment. Brokerages will now be able to monitor accounts in real time and block trades that would create a margin deficit. Firms that don't want to build on those systems can instead calculate whether a customer fell short at the end of the day. If a trader does not fix that shortfall within 5 business days, the brokerage can freeze the account from taking on more borrowed money trading for up to 90 days. Small shortfalls under $1,000 or 5% of the account size can be ignored. Um, Whether the change ultimately helps retail traders will take years to answer. The next time a meme stock implodes or a wave of small investors blows up an option, critics will almost certainly point back to this decision. One thing is clear, though: the rule change is good for retail brokers. The shares of Robinhood and Webull were both up more than 10% on Wednesday. So that is So they talked about the dot-com bubble and how this rule came from that. But to be fair, it's not entirely like the traders' fault. The dot-com bubble was the way it is. It's a lot of other things as well. But for sure, a bunch of people getting onto the stock market exchange that, I'm not trying to be mean, but have absolutely no reason being there. Um, and and there's a couple things on top of that. One, it's $25,000. You have to maintain that balance. But like removing the minimum balance requirement for day trading would likely increase the number of individuals participating in the market, at least day trading wise, because there's not that barrier to entry. Kind of like in the 90s, I bring this up all the time. Back in the 90s, when Bill Clinton got rid of the whole you need like 25% or 30% down to buy a house, he got rid of that. So it's like, you can buy a house with zero down, which is stupid, but people do it. Boom, inflated assets, because now for most of these these companies, these shares, they're not producing more shares, they're not making more shares. The number of shares they have is capped, but now theoretically you have a lot more people fighting for those shares. This, basic economics: same amount of supply, increased demand, price goes up. So you can expect what's called, stocks to go up. And we have an article, a couple things down about uh, the problems with this, but we can get to that. We'll get to that when we get to it. Removing barriers to day trading could shift market behavior by increasing the volume of speculative transactions. Speculation involves coping with inherent risk to minimize it, but also reflects a desire to save, quote, paper profits, unquote, before a market slide causes an immediate stampede. Yeah, that's another thing. They brought it up in the article. It was like people are taking on small loans. One, if you're trading, don't take on loans. To me, that just sounds irresponsible. You should it. I'm not equating trading stocks to gambling, but you should treat it like gambling. You should only trade what you're willing to get rid of, because you never know how things are going to react. But yeah, for example, that was another thing. It was the we have a lot more people going in, so that means your volatility increases and volatility increases, which means sometimes stocks are going to just shoot up and sometimes stocks are going to shoot down. Because I'm not trying to be mean, but like during the dot-com bubble, ordinary people who had no business doing so became day traders as market valuations for companies with no earnings soared. So meaning that like companies that probably weren't going to be like, $1,000 share companies were becoming $100,000 share companies just because we had a lot of people investing into things that they don't understand yet. And when you have a lot of people doing it at one time, it creates volatility. Kind of like during the 1920s with the run on banks. A handful of people were trying to draw money out of the banks. Banks didn't have the money, so now everybody, because you didn't have to have a minimum amount, or at least a large amount in the bank to be in the bank, because a handful of people couldn't get their money, everybody wanted to try to pull their money out. Same thing would happen with stocks. If, like, for example, what was it? GameStop. Everyone, like, people were like, what was it? Like, the GameStop meme. Everyone's like, just buy GameStop stock and it goes up. And because everybody's doing it, the price is going to inflate more so than probably the meme would have generated on its own. And that was kind of the one of the problems with like the dot-com bubble. And they brought it up here, which I find interesting. Is like, yeah, the SEC is unwinding a rule born from the wreckage, not the fun time, the wreckage of the dot-com crash. And now I have a theory, and I'll go into it now, but we'll also go into it later. Is that like we've been here, we've heard reports that AI companies are not doing so hot. What was the company that hasn't turned a profit? I think most of them haven't, but what was one company that keeps stating they haven't turned a profit? What was it? Was it OpenAI?
Every AI company?
Yeah, for sure. But there's
OpenAI. I know Anthropic isn't turning a profit, but I think you're talking about OpenAI.
Yeah, and it's like, I think, now granted, I could be wrong. I'm not on the SEC board or whatever, but I think that they see that companies are not turning a profit, but they've bet so much on AI that if it crashes, now granted, I think it's crashing, period, but I think if it crashes before we even have like IPO stuff, everything's going to get wrecked. Mm-hmm. So I think what they're doing is lowering or essentially removing that barrier to entry, at least for day trading. Like, not trying to be mean, but if you're going to be day trading, you should probably know what you're doing. You probably shouldn't be borrowing money to do it. But, besides the point. Sorry.
Come on now. Come on.
I mean, besides the point, but it's like, I think they're worried.
Hold on. How else are the ultra wealthy supposed to scalp money off of the retards?
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that they're trying to get people into the market once the IPOs hit. Because we've been talking about it. We're talking about it. People who are like passively interested in like stock trading, they know about it. About the IPOs coming at the end of the year for AI companies. If it looks like it's dead in the water, they're not gonna be able to scalp the poor people. So they need a bunch of people in the market now, putting in money, inflating prices, And then once the IPOs hit and prices will inflate even further, the rich people know what's going on. They pull out, leaving the poor people holding deflated value stocks. This is nothing new. This happened during the dot-com bubble. This happened during, I think it was like one of the crashes from the like it was around like I think one of the crashes from the Great Depression itself was that everyone was investing. A bunch of rich people were like, if we have a bunch of random people who don't know the markets as well as we do, they're gonna. I'm not saying, I'm not saying I sympathize with the rich people, but it's kind of like you're a cook in a restaurant, and the customers now get to come in and make their own food next to you. I'm walking out. Maybe I'll make a cheeseburger for myself and then walk out. So,
Right.
I mean, that's my main issue.
This feels almost like intentionally predatory. This is like the sports betting of the investment world, where you're letting in a bunch of people who it would be irresponsible. Like, you're taking down what was an important guardrail to sort of the safety of all involved, and are doing so like friction is an important tool that tells you something about someone, right? And when you remove friction, you kind of just let everyone in, which can have its benefits. But when you remove that, like, hey, if you're gonna be a day trader, you need at least 25 grand here. It's basically saying, hey, we think it's for better stability and safety of everyone that, like, you not only do you have some skin in the game, but you need some, like, relatively pretty. If your average American is making 70 some odd $1,000 a year, that's like almost a third of your income. Like, you need to have some serious skin in the game if you're gonna try to make like a living off of this, or get really seriously involved here. This can't just be a like, I don't want to say one-off, but like, we don't want people throwing away every penny they have just to like constantly try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. Like, we want you to put up some cash up front, and for you to really, really think about like what it means to get into this. And when you remove that barrier, all you're essentially saying to the people who are already in and who already have all of their stuff is basically like, who are already in and already know the markets and already know all the rules and whatnot, is when you let in a whole bunch of new people, you're essentially saying, all right, well, here's a whole bunch of poor people for you to just like feed off of. And it's like, oh, well, great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's good for them, but it's not so great for you. And it's very destabilizing. It takes what is already a kind of lopsided system and makes it even more lopsided.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a couple things you brought up. The one point on one, an example is like, now granted, I don't know how everyone else's gyms is, but I've been to a couple gyms. The YMCA, for my opinion, is usually a lot cleaner than the Planet Fitness. So, and my analogy for that is like, when you pay more for a members only club kind of thing, there are generally benefits to it. There's more structure, there's more organization, as opposed to you pay $1 to go to Planet Fitness. I mean, it's great because now essentially everyone can go into the gym, but now the problem is everyone is going to the gym. You're going to have people who don't clean up after themselves, don't put the weights away, stand next to the equipment but pretend they're still on the equipment, and then they'll yell at you, and things like that. So barrier to entries usually ensure, like, now granted, it's not a guarantee, but barrier to entries, members only crap, they you can at least expect a level of organization that comes from your money. So that's one thing. So we remove that barrier for stock trading. Second of all, you brought up not call sheets. You brought up like sports bet trading. That also might be a reason why they're doing with this, because they've realized they've lost a bunch of people who want to try to make money on the market. Don't want to day trade, but put their money in the stock market to hope to get the money back. Now a bunch of people are just going to call sheet, putting their money there. They just lost some customers. I know call sheet isn't like betting, because it's like you're betting on like stocks of some sort of outcome or whatever. And I think the SEC and, like, stock trading is like, well, we've just lost a bunch of poor people who are giving us money anyways because they don't know what they're doing. So going to a
Mm-hmm.
what's it called? Going to an app that isn't backed by the FTC, so they don't have the same restrictions. They don't have the same regulations to keep people not throwing all of their money away. Things similar to that. So that might be another reason. I don't have any evidence of that, but it might be another reason why they're like, maybe we should lower the barrier. I mean, I wouldn't mind, honestly, because they did bring up, like, people are more informed these days. They have instant trading apps. They don't have to necessarily go through an actual broker. They can go to, like, Robinhood, Webull, Fidelity, and just, like they're shopping on DoorDash, click, I want this much, bam, paid. You know what I mean? Then I can't remember about Robinhood. I think like Fidelity, Webull, and to an extent like Coinbase. They always have like, oh, here's some recent articles on the company you're looking at, so you can read about it. So you have a lot more faster information, and to an extent, I do say to an extent, like at least like when brokers call you, they're trying to sell you a product. With Robinhood and like Webull, they're not, the only product they're selling is their services. You know what I mean? You're not pressured into buying something from somebody, because that's all brokers are doing. They're just taking stocks from one person to another, getting that commission in between. So you know what I mean? So my point with that is that like it's like going to the store to buy hot dogs as opposed to someone you don't know trying to sell you hot dogs. You're probably more comfortable buying hot dogs on your own, but because you don't know what that person's done. But where was I going with that? Yeah, so I mean, like I wouldn't mind it so much because of that, but I would prefer if like a lower barrier to entry. You know what I mean? Like be like you need $15,000. You know what I mean? Like you're a lot more informed these days. You have apps that will provide you news or whatever on a dime, the dime that they're posted. But still, the fact that there's no coverage for these people, which kind of tells me that they don't care if something happens. Now, grant something happens to people. Now, they did say like, shortfalls of $1,000, 5%, they can freeze it. That doesn't mean anything if they've already got the money. You know what I mean? Like if they take 1,000, I say they. I do mean like some dude loses $1,000. They've got that money. They don't care if that dude, to an extent, fills back. I mean, they want the dude to fill back up so he can trade again. But there's no cushion for him. If he doesn't trade ever again, doesn't matter. They've got it. Kind of like casinos. Mm-hmm. If the dude loses $1,000, on blackjack, they don't care. They've got the chips. They only care if he's actually going to come back and play again. So the fact that there's like no cushion for bad trades shows me that either A, they're trying to inflate something, which in my opinion is true. B, they're trying to get people that left them to go to Call Sheet, because Call Sheet's like I've gone there a handful of times. It's lucrative, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care about to an extent. It's like I don't care what Facebook's doing. This guy says he's gonna eat 20 hot dogs in 10 minutes. I don't think he can do it. You know what I mean?
on that point of it being lucrative, Call Sheet also being a no minimum stakes. Anyone can enter. They don't care how much money you have in your bank account, or they do, just as long as you can like pay up, you're good. And you can, it doesn't check to see who's setting a bet where. So like I could make a bet that I eat a hot dog and then or I make bet, man eats hot dog, right? Or insert person, right? Who I am, right? I give my name and my blah, blah, blah. Eats hot dog at this time, at this location. And then I, with an anonymous account, put, $10,000 on yes. And then someone else or whatever, however the site works, if I win, well, then I 1.5x my money, or I double my money based on whatever the odds might be, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I can control like whatever I think the standard, right? Like we've seen a lot of this with like some of the political stuff recently, right? It's like, oh yeah, some totally anonymous account just put this 9-leg parlay on exactly how the first 3 days of the Iranian conflict will play out. Oh, hey, look at that! They were right about every single one of them, and just made $150 million. How weird is that? Well, too bad we can't track that person or figure out who they were, because if that would just be inconvenient and annoying, and
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to do it. And it's like, obviously, the no accountability here is an intentional tool to do. I mean, people call it like wealth transfer, right? You can just suck a whole bunch of money out of people who are like, nah, that can't happen, right? And on that point, you can kind of invert that. There's a bot I saw. If you look at the data, it's something like 60% of all Kalshi and whatever the other one is, Polymarket, whatever betting things, all 60% of them resolve to no, or the false, right? Whatever the thing that you're betting happens, 60% of them resolve to the thing not happening. And so this person set up a bot that just always puts money on no, and it's so far made them a decent chunk of change. But yeah, like this, dropping the barriers and that stuff, where I understand that, like, trying to outcompete these like betting markets that work in like a similar ish way to how investment markets work, but a little bit more detached from reality. um, I think my pet conspiracy is that, like, I would not be surprised if the people who are in charge of the betting markets are buddy buddy with the people who are in charge of like the SEC and whatnot, and are just trying to turn the stock market into the betting markets, because the betting markets are a more effective like wealth transfer machine, even if they're more volatile. So if you care less about the long-term health of your nation's economy and more about immediate enrichment of yourself, to then comport over, or not comport, to then port over to um, assets or other things that have a bit more stable value. So you start with this very volatile thing that you can somewhat exert influence over, extract all the value out of that volatility, put it into more stable assets like, real estate or whatever else. Um, you can effectively like take a bunch of wealth and then hoard it. Hoard it is maybe not the right way to phrase it, but like effectively hoard it, or exercise sole judiciary over that, as opposed to have to negotiate it with the market, right? You no longer have to negotiate with the market, or the market is in a significantly more favorable position to you, but is also more stable in the long term, a la real estate.
No, yeah, like absolutely. And something now that I've thought about it for a bit, I wonder if like the SEC is like testing something here, because obviously you brought up the whole like, well, someone bet like it was like $10,000 that there would be a ceasefire by this day, and they came out with like $120,000, and they made that bet like 18 hours before the whole news came out. And another thing that I thought of was when I first heard about Polymarket was when it was during the WNBA games where people would randomly throw a device for women to use to have fun with. They would throw that onto the court, and after the first time, people started making calls on Polymarket about what color it would be, and how easy it would be to be like, oh, I'm gonna say it's gonna be blue, and then just bring a blue
Mm-hmm.
fun device to it, and then
Mm-hmm.
make all the bets on yes, and obviously there'll be people who bet no, it's not blue, it'd be whatever. And then even then you can make bets on other people's bets. You can actually make another account, be like, I'm bet it's gonna be green. You can bet no on green
Uh-huh.
because you know it's blue. Toss it out. You made money
Yep.
from two separate whatevers. But even in light of stuff like that, Polymark and Kalshi have only increased in users. Another example I think of is the Counter Strike market, the skin market. How different skins get pumped because companies, people in China with a lot of money can pump and dump skins.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of people that, at least what I'm seeing, the amount of people who still do stuff with like Counter Strike hasn't gone down. If anything, more people are
Yeah.
coming in to try to get on that Chinese pump and dumps. So I wonder if the SEC is
My
seeing
search
this and
history.
fair. I wonder if like the FCC is seeing this and they're like, because I've always held the theory that Valve, the people who with the Steam, the behind the Counter-Strike skin market, they don't care that these skins are getting pumped and dumped, because at the end of the day, they're still taking profits from this. I have to assume that the people in the SEC they're not just there for fun. They have their own stocks, they have their own options and things like that. And at the end of the day, if you have a bunch of, again, we say this at the beginning, you have a bunch of people who don't understand how manipulation works, you can profit off them easy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a $25,000 barrier, that eliminates how many people you can rip off. And to an extent, if someone has $25,000 to start day trading with, if I was a betting man, if I was putting money on a call sheet, I would say that person probably has an idea of what's going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not day trading. I also don't have $25,000 because I don't make that much. I don't know how to save that much. So, you know what I mean? So if someone has $25,000, it's kind of reasonable to assume, like, okay, he's got that money. He might know what he's doing with it. But if there's people out there you can manipulate, especially when the economy's going kind of crazy, you can make easy money off people. And not only that, all they got to do is be like, make their bag, wait for the crash, and be like, guys, this was a mistake. Let's put the rule back in. And then bam, you've made your bag, you cut off all the poor people, and now the only people left are people who know what to do with the markets. And they've made their bag, and they can work with it again. And this kind of, kind of, I'm terrible at segues, but this kind of leads back to the, like, you probably shouldn't be day trading or making bets on call sheet if you don't have the money to work with it. And the next report comes from MSN. A new report reveals that 40% of Americans have less than $500 in savings. The U.S. dollar index, a key indicator of the dollar's strength against the world's most significant trading partners, has been on a decline for several consecutive sessions. On April 14th, it dropped to 98, reaching its lowest level since the beginning of the United States-Israel-Iran conflict. A bigger concern now is the faith of the Americans in the dollar, as the financial cushion most of them rely on is quietly shrinking. A survey commissioned by LendingTree and conducted by QuestionPro among 2,000 U.S. adults in February 2026 paints a stark picture. More Americans are seeing their savings shrink than grow. Nearly 3 in 10, or 29%, of Americans have less cash in savings than a year ago, compared with only 25% who have more. Another 40% say their savings have not moved at all, which in an inflationary environment is effectively the same as falling behind. The numbers are getting more alarmingly up close, and about 14% of Americans have no cash savings whatsoever, a figure that rises to 32% among those earning under $30,000 a year, and 20% among women. Among those who do have something saved, 32% have less than $1,000. Breaking it down further, 12% have between $1 and $99, 11% have between $100 and $499, and 9% have between $500 and $999. This means nearly 4 in 10 Americans are sitting on less than $500 in cash savings. This suggests that the cash that they have cannot cover most emergency expenses or even a single month of rent in most American cities. Why is money running out? The survey points clearly to the cost of living as the primary villain. When asked why they are not saving more, 34% of respondents said the cost of living and essentials consume all of their income. 2/3, or 66% of Americans, said that they had withdrawn from their savings in the past year, with the most common reason being food and essentials. Perhaps most strikingly is the emergency buffer question. Nearly half of Americans, approximately 45% of them, say they would not be able to cover more than 1 month of essentials if their income stopped today. A troubling 23%. A troubling 23% say their savings could not even cover a full week. Yeah, so I mean that's nothing new. We've known that because of the Iran war, oil being stopped to to tolls that oil would have to go through. Prices go up because oil goes up, gas goes up, gas goes up. It costs more money to transport your goods because your goods cost more money. The company's not going to eat that. They're going to push it onto you and you as the consumer. Then, well, yeah, there you go. Prices go up. It's stated here, it's stated in the article, real income is measured by the volume of goods and services it can buy. When prices rise faster than wages, the real income of the bottom 50% declines, making it nearly impossible to set aside savings after meeting basic needs. It's kind of hard to save for a doctor visit if you can't eat enough to make it to the doctor visit. And when it comes to inflation, this is nothing new. We say this all the time. Inflation, it benefits those who own assets and punishes those who don't have assets. You buy 3 houses, and inflation goes up. Well, guess what? Your house just went up in value. You theoretically have more money because of your assets. You put your money in a bank account. Inflation happens. Well, the how much you can buy with that money goes down. So, I remember there was a story, I think it was in the 40s or 50s. I forgot what country it was, but inflation was so high that people would actually go out, take their money after they got paid, and buy washing machines. And hoard washing machines because it was a better retainer of value than just putting your money in the bank. Now, granted, putting money in the bank, because inflation usually isn't the best idea, but the benefit is that you have that money instantly. You can always access it, and when inflation's at 1 or 2%, you can work with it. You know what I mean? Like, if your apples went from $1 to $1.01, and let's say you buy 5 apples every week, and then 5 cents, you can manage it. But when the average inflation. Now, granted, I'm just talking about from the past year or the past 3 months because of the oil crisis. I'm talking about like COVID stuff because inflation, whatever. That's what happens. Like I remember it was like the second or third year of the Biden administration. Inflation peaked on average at like 9.4%, which was, I think, borderline Great Depression levels of inflation. And that's average. I remember seeing a report that eggs had gone up like 26% in inflation. Now, granted, prices have come down, but they're not reaching pre-pandemic levels. And with the war going on and all the oil being stopping from the Middle East, it wasn't going to go down forever. And if anything, not if anything, the article says so itself, it's going back up again. What's it called? I do have a note here. I'm going to get into it really quick. Some economists argue that the real problem is not just how wealth is distributed, but a failure of production. If the economy is not producing enough goods and services efficiently, the resulting scarcity leads to high prices that consume the entirety of a worker's income. So yeah, I talked about it. Production going overseas. We talk about tariffs, but we're going back and forth on that with how if Trump can do it, what he can do, what he can't do, how long it lasts, how much it can be, whatever. But when we send all of our production overseas, and then there's a haltage in the oil, so not only is it overseas, it stays overseas because there's not enough to transport to us, and even if there is, it's at inflated prices because the oil prices have gone up. I think we're at like $98 a barrel, which is, it's gone down from like the past 2 weeks for sure. But I think like before the war, it was like, if I'm not mistaken, like $79, $80 a barrel, around there. So we are still up, down from like a week or two ago, but still up. So, so of course, now grant that prices are going to go up because of that. Anything you want to add? Did you want on a tangent there?
I don't know. I don't think the oil prices have settled. I think it's just going to be super volatile until the whole stuff with the Strait gets figured out. That's really about all the insight that I want to throw at that while we're still sort of in the heat of it.
Okay, yeah, I got you, And yeah, I don't think it's going down anytime soon. And even if, what's called, even if things get sorted out, like I say this a couple times. We eliminated like 30 of their top people, of their politicians.
Uh-huh.
It's gonna take a while to get people into those positions, unless the U.S. government already had like a handful of people that they had, an idea of. But besides the point, um, you know what I mean? Building up that infrastructure
Yep.
again to get it rolling, that's an issue. That's not including. I think I remember. I don't know how accurate this is, but it's kind of funny that they first, when Iran first closed the Strait of Hormuz, they laid out a bunch of mines, but they didn't
Oh yeah, they
track.
don't know where all of them are.
They don't know where they all are. And I know what's it called. Like even if they're like, okay, we'll open it up, which I think I sent you a report. I don't know how accurate it is. It was kind of short, so usually with like short like reports, I'm kind of questioning if it's accurate. But like they said Iran folded and they're not going to test the U.S. or the Strait of Hormuz, whatever. But even if they were like, okay, we give in, we'll open it up, it's going to take time to find those
Mm-hmm.
mines. Um, Now, granted, I was thinking like the U.S. has amazing technology, like 10 to 15 years, 20 years into the future that we see now. But who knows how long it could take because one, they didn't track where they placed them. B, it's moving water, so they can go anywhere. Three, C, I I don't even know if they know how many they had. You know what I mean? If they put 300
Mm-hmm.
out and we get 295 of them, and then traffic continues, one blows up, everything's cut off again.
He shuts down
Yeah,
again.
it
Yep.
shuts down again. So then we have that issue. Uh, so it sucks for us as consumers. It sucks that things like this weren't taken. Now, granted, like I do think the conspiracy theory we've been talking about for like the past month is true. Because I remember seeing like some picture of a bunch of oil tankers flooding to the flooding to Texas to get oil. But
Mm-hmm.
it's important to keep in mind that oil is for other countries. So if you were thinking of your oil going down until things make some drastic changes, those are other countries getting their oil. That I remember I think it was like China gets like 55% of their oil from the Middle East. Japan gets like 40%. India gets like I think somewhere it's like 20%. I could be wrong with these numbers. Please fact check me. But so those oils going for other countries. So even if it seems like, oh, we have a bunch of oil here, well, we're selling that oil and that money's going to the gas companies and the U.S. government. So that's you know what I mean. That another example of it just hurting us. But it's kind of rough. Now, granted, there's a lot of people that blame Israel, and in fact, I think one of our generals, if I'm not mistaken, admitted that Israel pushed us into this. Okay, I say pushed. Israel said they were going to make an attack, and he said we were going to do an attack anyways, but it wasn't going to be this soon, so we did it anyways. Which I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you couldn't have negotiated
What?
for like one. That kind of makes it seem like they control us. B, you couldn't have told them to be like hold off for a few months. You know what I mean? I get that they've been having issues for years, but have been having issues for years. They can postpone some stuff, but I remember that they admitted to that. Now that was like 3 weeks ago. I could be wrong. I forgot who admitted it. I think it was like one of the like was it a dude, the head of the War Department?
I was pretty
Any,
sure.
yeah. Anyways, but it's like it sucks that they make because I bring this up. Politicians make decisions now because they don't have to deal with the consequences later. Especially Trump in his second and final term. It doesn't matter what he does. He's not trying to get reelected. I don't think with how many people are kind of turning his backs on him. I don't think he cares what they think. he's just doing what he wants, and he's rich. He can absorb whatever problems are happening, but they make decisions. They don't care how it affects us because they don't have to go for. Well, he can't, but a lot of other politicians we'll be talking about later. They don't have to worry about it if they don't want to run for re-election again. And even then, if they want to run for re-election, just 6 months before, it'd be like, oh, we're changing some stuff, whatever. So. Yep, that sucks. So, I don't, even if it, again, we said it, I don't know if, even if it did open up, it would take a while. I think our best bet is to, I mean, we're already, pumping the oil out of from Texas. I think we need to double time on that Venezuela stuff, because apparently, I didn't know this at the time. I knew it was large, but I guess Venezuela has, like, the largest oil reserves in the world.
Or one of, yeah.
Or one of, yeah. And it's not about Greenland, too. Oh, no, wait. Greenland is for some kind of mineral. Never mind. But
it's rare. I think
rare earth metals, yeah. But again, it's basic economics. Same amount of demand, less supply. We need to work on the supply, as opposed to Europe, where they're like, stop using electricity. Are they send you that?
Yeah, like everyone to turn off your lights, just crank it all down. Why make it just more difficult for the government? Yeah.
But so yeah, that's gonna suck. We'll see how this turns out. Again, probably not gonna be anytime soon. And not only that, usually gas prices go up in the summer because everybody wants to travel. So, and we're getting there anyways. Started taking the fans out at work again. But our next article